JMU fans and fans from across the Sun Belt, welcome to another edition of Word on the Belt. My name is Grant Johnson. I'm one of the sports editors for The Breeze, James Madison student newspaper. And today I'm joined by some student media from the Hawkeye, Louisiana Monroe student journalism. We've got Cameron Jett, the editor-in-chief of the Hawkeye, as well as Jonah Bostick, the sports editor of the Hawkeye. How are you guys doing this morning?
Doing pretty good, man. Glad to be here.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, to kind of hop right into it, if any listeners are new here, what Word on the Belt is this a, video series presented by The Breeze. As JMU is new to the Sun Belt, we're trying to kind of introduce JMU Nation and other Sun Belt fan bases to what this new look Sun Belt is. So we've been bringing in student media, professional media from all the Sun Belt schools and trying to kind of get a little basis of knowledge on what all these new teams are like as JMU embarks on a transition from the CAA, the FCS to the Sun Belt. So, with ULM, Cameron and Jonah, the first thing I want to do is kind of hop into the history. So, Cameron, Jonah, whoever wants to kind of start off, just kind of give a little brief rundown of, what ULM athletics has kind of been like over the years for maybe a listener who doesn't know too much about the Hawkeyes.
I guess I'll go. Historically, at least from a football standpoint, we've had a rough history, overall. But we have had our moments of success, over the years. So some examples of that in 1987. We won the FCS national championship. We defeated Northern Iowa, I believe. It was Northern Iowa. We beat them in the national championship. I believe that's our only football national championship we have. So there's that. Of course, in 1994. We had our own transition to the Sun Belt from FCS play. And in 2006, with our overall athletics, we had a name change. We went from the Indians to the Warhawks, which is our current mascot today. So again, despite our sort of losing tradition, we have had some big wins. We've had four, as an FBS program, we've had 4 wins versus the SEC, including in 2007, we beat Nick Saban's Alabama squad. That was his first year. So that was a very big win for us. And in 2012, which overall for our athletics was a very good season. We went on the road to Little Rock and we beat the number 8 team in the country in Arkansas. And that season overall was very successful. We went 8-4. We had a lot of close losses to good teams. And that was our first and only bowl game as an FBS program. Our baseball team that season also made the NCAA tournament that year. They were Sun Belt tournament champions that year. So that's the only year they've won that in the tournament. They won the regular season championship in 2008. And baseball has made the NCAA tournament 5 times in its history. It's never made it past the regional rounds. That's usually because we run into LSU a lot. We've had 4 of our regionals against them. So they're a really good baseball program. So not much we can really do there. We have, the former head coach, at least of the Philadelphia Eagles, Doug Peterson. He was from ULM. He won Super Bowl 52, giving them their first championship. And so he's kind of held as a iconic figure here at ULM. And one of our retired numbers is Stan Humphreys. He was our quarterback during that championship run in 1987. So we have had some notable players come from ULM. So.
And then Cameron, anything you want to add to that conversation? Maybe beyond football, beyond baseball, anything, top players, history?
I think he covered it. Basketball, we've had a couple appearances in the tournament, but never anything worthwhile. We've never had a win. Athletics hasn't been the shining point for a lot of sports up until more recent years, I would say, or either very far in the past. Now, I will segue into football over the past couple of years because we've had a big change since 2020. Just to fill you in for 2020, that was about as worse as it gets for football. We had the worst record in the nation at 0-10. We did not hold a lead for a single minute. So coming out of 2020, the athletics department was looking to make a big change, and we reached out. They reached out to hire the son of a two-time national champion as a coach who's taken a team to postseason play, whether in an FCS tournament or in a bowl game as an FBS team. The 1993 Bear Bryant Coach of the Year at Auburn. ULM hired Coach Terry Bowden to take over the team for this last season. And coming off 0-10, the expectations are we got to win something. And 4-8 didn't seem like a lot, but coming off of what we had the year prior, it was a lot better. We had 3 wins as underdogs, including a victory over Malik Willis and Liberty as 34.5-point underdogs, which I think was the largest upset in football last season. It looked like we were going to a bowl game for a little bit, but we did drop 2 easy ones to Texas State and Arkansas State that kind of put that to rest. So overall, the trend over the past couple of seasons it's been looking up with the new coaching staff getting set. But we're ready to see what the season holds.
Right. No, for sure. And, something else I want to hit on. So, with this kind of new look Sun Belt, you talked about ULM kind of been a stronghold in the Sun Belt since the 1990s. They've been in this league a lot longer than, some of these new teams, even longer than, App State, Georgia State, which, have joined in the last decade. So I guess from, Cameron, Jonah, from your outlooks covering this team, in the Sun Belt, all this movement, not only in the Sun Belt, but around you guys, just in college football, in your region, obviously, LSU, now in the SEC, they've got Texas and Oklahoma, and, now the Sun Belt adding ODU and Southern Miss and Marshall and JMU. Out goes UT Arlington. What was it like kind of covering all this movement in the Sun Belt and, kind of trying to take this all in and trying to process what this new league is like?
It was very exciting when the whole alignments first originally started with Oklahoma and Texas. We were waiting around to see how this would affect all the other conferences, and eventually it made its way to the Sun Belt. We saw Conference USA getting hit pretty hard. We have Louisiana Tech just down the road, 30 minutes away, and we saw a bunch of their members dip for the Athletic. And of course, we picked up 3 by way of Conference USA and Old Dominion, Marshall, and Southern Miss. And of course, seeing James Madison join was interesting, as it was the outlier, also making the jump from FCS. So it was interesting to see that, but it did the realignments did cost us our two non-football members, which was UT Arlington and Arkansas Little Rock. But overall, I'm excited to see more football teams come in, and I think outside of football, there's still going to be great competition from all these teams coming in. Just for example, Southern Miss had an excellent postseason run in baseball, so I'm excited to see what competition that brings with already stacked teams such as Texas State in the baseball realm.
And then, Jonah, as sports editor, what was it kind of like covering all this, kind of mayhem?
I'd also have to say it was exciting because, as a conference, the Sun Belt has been kind of looked over upon. When a lot of people look at Group of 5 conferences, they look at the American Athletic Conference, they look at Conference USA, Mountain West. Nobody really looks at the Sun Belt. So when all these new teams joined, a lot of good teams, I should say, it creates a sense of excitement because now there's going to be some actual good competition in the Sun Belt, and people will start paying attention. And you guys joining, I've kind of briefly followed James Madison over the years, but y'all have been an FCS powerhouse up there with North Dakota State, Sam Houston, all them. So y'all joining, it kind of brings a spark to our conference, I should say.
And now that we kind of feel like that spark is there, it's there in 2022. All these teams are, kind of joining right away, which, in conference realignments doesn't always happen. So I want to kind of jump to some outlooks for ULM on, in your 2022, 2023 athletic year. And, we'll start with football. Obviously, Cameron, you kind of hit on it, 0-10 during the COVID year, but, hiring a new coach, now up to 4-8, some big, upset wins over Liberty. But ULM's the schedule gauntlet is right away. I mean, you guys play Texas and Alabama in the first 3 weeks of the year before going into Sun Belt competition. So maybe just kind of give me a little bit of a kind of what your expectations are for 2022 and maybe some projections, in football and beyond. And, maybe some like under the radar players to watch that people who don't follow ULM should maybe become aware of across sports.
All right. So I'll get into that. First off, like you said, we have a very daunting schedule. Like you said, start week 1, we're at Texas, get kind of an easier week against in-state team Nicholls State. Then we're at Tuscaloosa. We've also got Coastal Carolina coming to Monroe. We host ULL, Louisiana Lafayette. We've got Southern Miss joining. Some players I will watch out for this season is I'm looking forward to the development of quarterback Chandler Rogers. Coming in last year, he played a backup spot when we lost starting quarterback Rhett Rodriguez, son of our former offensive coordinator Rich Rodriguez. And he played very well. He picked up some Sun Belt Player of the Week nods. He picked up the Manning Passer Award during his game against South Alabama or Liberty, I believe. So he established himself as a solid quarterback. Excited to see the development. Really excited to see the development of our slot wide receiver Boogie Knight, who, if nothing else, has the coolest name in the conference, I believe. This kid picked up all conference team nods, and I'm excited to see how they play. We've lost some big names on the defense. I'm excited to see what young guys will be stepping up and filling in some of the gaps that we have now. The weak point for us, I believe, is our offensive line. We only have about 5 to 6 scholarship players on the roster for our O-line. We're relying on a lot of walk-ons and just hoping we picked up some transfer portal guys to fill in for depth. Because when you play against some of the premier defensive lines, especially the ones we get with Texas, Army, and Bama, it's going to be rough.
And, Jonah, I'll swing it over to you. Kind of piggybacking off that, maybe thoughts on, what Cameron called such a daunting schedule for football. And then maybe, after, across football, what are some other maybe teams to kind of spotlight for ULM this upcoming athletic year?
Yeah. It is a tough schedule when you look at the first 4 weeks and you get, three really good teams, and you start off with Texas, and then you have to go to Alabama, which is the number 1 team in the country pretty much. And then right after that, you got to play Lafayette, which we usually play at the end of the year. That's like our big rivalry week game, but for some reason they moved it earlier. So yeah, that's a really tough start. And then you also get Coastal in there. So it'll take a little bit of time for our team to settle in. Our schedule does kind of drop off at the end of the year. I think past Army, we have 4 games, which I think are winnable against Texas State, Georgia State, Troy, and Southern Miss. I feel like we can start to pick up some momentum there, possibly. But yeah, it's going to be a really rough schedule to start off. So going off of players, I'd also like to comment on Chandler Rogers, and just the fact that he brought something to our offense that we hadn't seen in 2 years. He can throw the ball, but he's also very mobile. He can escape the pocket. Those offensive line issues, he can sort of fix that. I mean, obviously, if you have a bad offensive line, it's not going to be good, but he can sort of lessen the damage with his mobility. He can get out of the pocket, gain a few yards on a play. So there's that. Another player to watch out for, and this is going to be it's going to be a completely under the radar player. I think Christian Driggers, one of our transfers. I went to high school with him, so I watched him play in high school. I watched him play in junior college. Watch out for this guy because he's elite, and I think he'll get some starting time in this year. I don't think it'll take long for him to get on the field. So definitely watch out for Tristan Driggers. He's a defensive back. He's a hard hitter, so watch out for him, I would say. Yeah.
And maybe some thoughts on, beyond football, who are maybe some standout guys at ULM, or maybe some teams this year that, like watch out for.
A team I'm really excited to see is going to be our women's soccer team, honestly. I believe last season they were our best overall team. You go check the record, you see a lot of losses. However, most of those due to a technicality. We had a player that we did not know was ineligible to play because where she's from, she was a professional. So any game she had minutes in, we had to forfeit at the end of the regular season, which was tragic because we had the best start to a season in program history. Now, they still made a decent run when it came time for the Sun Belt tournament, but being such a low seed because of the forfeit losses, they played an extra game. Had they not have faced the fatigue from the extra game, I really think they made a run for the conference title. Softball's also on the rise. We picked up a transfer from LSU who had an instant impact with us last year. They had the best start to the programs, best start for a program in school history. They tied it, but they were just kind of outmatched when they got to conference play at the end of the year.
Yeah, no, I mean that women's soccer story is crazy. I never heard about that. I mean, did you know if the coaches were aware that this player had minutes?
I believe they were, because about midway through the season, before anything was released, me and a writer who covers soccer, me and her took a good look into it, and you could see about the midway point to where she stopped. She didn't get any play time, and that's when there were a lot of forfeits. But she got play time, particularly at the early part of the season. That's where some of those forfeits were at, and you saw massive. There were massive wins for us, but unfortunately, rules are rules.
Yeah, that's crazy. And I kind of want to bring this ahead to maybe get your guys' perspective a little bit on JMU. Jonah, you talked about you've been following them a little bit, but an FCS team moving up to the FBS in 2022 in the Sun Belt is a lot more different, I feel like, than when App State and Georgia State did that. The league is a lot stronger now. I guess, what are your kind of expectations for JMU and just overall thoughts of, James Madison making that leap to the Sun Belt, and what do you guys kind of expect from them?
I'll go ahead. I'm going to say it's going to be a rough first year. I've seen the schedule. I think after a couple of years, y'all be all right, but you've got Coastal Carolina on your schedule, who, in my opinion, is the best team in the Sun Belt. As long as Grayson McCall is a quarterback, the kid's an elite quarterback, one of the best group of 5 quarterbacks out there, if not the best. 2-time Sun Belt Player of the Year. Has only thrown 6 interceptions in his collegiate career. You've also got App State, who's always daunting to play. It's always difficult to go to Boone and play. You got Marshall and Old Dominion, who are going to be competitive. You even have Louisville in your schedule. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be probably a difficult year. I'm not saying that some upsets won't happen. But I say give it 2 to 4 years, and y'all find y'all's footing, and feel like y'all be contending in what is right now a very strong East Division.
Mm-hmm. And Jonah, I'll swing it over to you. Kind of are you on the same, wavelength as Cameron with kind of expectations for JMU?
In a way, I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about you guys. I see some wins on here. I see a good start. I see a 2-0 start with Middle Tennessee and Norfolk State. Obviously, you guys will struggle with some of these games like Louisville and Coastal. And I also believe Coastal is the best team in the Sun Belt, and they've been a powerhouse for the last couple of years. And App State, but there are some games on here that I think are totally winnable. So I think you guys will be around. I think you guys will be around 500. I would say probably around 5 wins at this point. But same thing he said. I would say give it a couple years, and year 3 or 4, you guys will be up there.
And, obviously, and for, rightfully so, you guys have both kind of waxed poetically a little bit about Coastal Carolina and, McCarr at quarterback. I guess from just kind of like nerding out a little bit, but I guess from like ULM's matchups with Coastal, over the years, like, what kind of makes Coastal so good, I guess, as, JMU fans when you kind of get to know of, their late season opponent there.
They just offensively, they come out and punch you in the mouth very fast. Even before McCall got there, they were still a threat through that. But since he's been there, like I said, I think he's one of the best group of 5 quarterbacks out there. Their defense has been good to shut you up really quick too, no matter who they're matching up against. It's very rare they drop games, and if they do, it's to a Power 5 opponent, or they have a tough matchup with one of the other powerhouses in the conference, which I believe are Louisiana Lafayette and App State.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Jonah, you want to anything?
Yeah. Just speaking from our personal games, we've gotten, we had an all right season last year, but we had a couple pretty bad losses, and I think Coastal was probably our worst loss. We just got completely blown out of the water there. And they can do that to you if you're not ready. And they've been there in the spotlight, and I think 2020 they played BYU, and that was a big game. Both teams were ranked in the top 20. So they've been there in the spotlight. They know what it's like. So, and that's kind of established them as one of the big dogs of not only the Sun Belt, but the group of 5 as a whole.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. So, Cameron, Jonah, that's like mostly what I have for you guys. Thank you so much for coming on. I guess before we get out of here, I want to kind of give you guys an opportunity to, plug the Hawkeye a little bit and plug your social medias. So, Cameron, Jonah, whoever wants to, start.
Jonah, go for it.
My Instagram is really hard to spell, so I might have to.
I'll drop mine for you. If you want to follow me on Instagram, jet.inc. If you want to see what we have on our newspaper, including sports, but as well as anything else that goes around the cities of West Monroe and Monroe and on campus here. Website is ULM or Hawkeye online. As editor-in-chief, I'm promising we're going to bolster our social media presence. Expect to see a lot more on the way of Twitter, on the way of Facebook, Instagram. Expect to see a lot of new stuff this year for anybody who's from the area or just wants to know more about the campus university in general.
Awesome. All right. So if you guys have anything else, any closing thoughts, guys?
Once again, I'm excited to see what the season holds, not just for us, but for every team in the conference. I'm expecting a high level of play across all sports from just about every team in the conference. Even teams who have not historically been good have always managed to play close in some very important games for the conference.
Yep. All right. Again, Cameron, Jonah, thank you guys so much for your time this morning. To all listeners, this has been another episode of Word on the Belt. My name's Grant Johnson. And with that, we're going to close this off. Thank you guys again so much for coming on. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.